The church bells were supposed to ring at 4. Instead, the sheriff, A.S. deputy, stapled a red notice on the heavy oak doors, while the florist sobbed into a bouquet that would never walk an aisle. Guests in pale summer suits drifted across the lawn like confused ghosts. My son, Ethan, stood under the gazebo, hands trembling, as the venue manager read the cancellation clause aloud, each sentence a nail in a dream. And beside him, in a gown that glittered with every ugly intention, stood his bride, Betrayal, jaw clenched, eyes cutting at me like I was a ruin she wanted bulldozed. If you're watching this, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe, because what happened next turned a wedding into a verdict and a mother's heartbreak into something sharper. You'll want to hear why nothing here was an accident. My name is Lorraine. I am 67 years old, and the night before this wedding, my future daughter-in-law told me the greatest gift I could give was to disappear from their family. So I did. Not with a suitcase, but with signatures. The wind carried the scent of hot roses and spilled champagne. White folding chairs leaned crooked in the grass. A violinist kept playing a trembling waltz until the bow fell from his fingers. I watched Betrayal hiss to her bridesmaids. She did this. That old woman. She's obsessed with control. One of them, her cousin Taryn, tucked a makeup brush into her clutch and whispered, "You said she'd be too scared." Fear was the language they thought I spoke. They were wrong. Ethan stumbled toward me, face pale. "Mom, what is this?" "They're saying the venue can't process the final payment because the cardholder revoked authorization. And the property, our place, why is there a lockbox on the door?" His eyes searched my face for mercy and found an ocean. "Because," I said, voice steady, "I removed my authorization. And that house you've been remodeling? It was never ours. It is mine, legally, and for a reason." 6 months earlier, when Ethan brought Betrayal home for the first time, I welcomed her with peach cobbler and my grandmother's china. She complimented the plates like a realtor scouting a kitchen. Within weeks, she had opinions about everything: my curtains, my bank, my obituary on the mantel before I'd died. She pressed Ethan to move out of my in-law apartment and into the Craftsman ID kept as a rental since Harold, my husband, passed. "Your mom can sign it over early," she said, light as a lark, "since it's already basically yours." Ethan has my husband's mouth, soft, quick to apologize. After the pandemic took Harold, we made one promise: our last home would always be a safe harbor for the family. I told Ethan I'd transfer the deed when he and I both agreed he'd chosen a partner who understood harbor from harboring. He laughed then. He isn't laughing now. Betrayal's mask cracked 2 months before the wedding. She cornered me in my own kitchen. "Listen, Lorraine," she began, nails tapping the marble island. "Traditionally, the groom's family covers the rehearsal dinner and half the venue. If that's a problem for you, maybe you shouldn't come at all." Her smile was weaponized sugar. I could have argued. Instead, I called my attorney, Mrs. Jensen, a brisk woman whose bracelets sound like tiny verdicts. We reviewed accounts, contracts, deed status. "You've been generous to a fault," she said, scanning the ledger. "But nothing here is irrevocable if you follow process." So I followed process. I rekeyed the Craftsman, audited the venue contract, signed by me as co-payer, and rescinded the auto-debit authorization. I also requested a lien search on Betrayal after a whisper from my sister, June, who'd heard talk at the salon. It showed 2 small claim suits from former roommates, both alleging borrowed money that never returned. The night before the wedding, Betrayal leaned into my ear at the rehearsal and said the sentence that wiped the mist from my eyes. "The greatest gift for our wedding," she breathed, "is if you disappear from our family." I looked down at the diamond bracelet circling her wrist. Ethan's grandmother Ada's heirloom I had loaned her for something borrowed. It glittered like a threat. "As you wish," I told her quietly. Now, on the ruined lawn, a murmur moved through the guests. The deputy finished stapling. The manager folded her clipboard. Betrayal stormed toward me, tulle snapping around her ankles. "You vindictive witch," she spat. You humiliated me on my day. You'll never see Ethan again. June stepped between us, small but steady, a hummingbird with a steel beak. Mind your voice, she told Brielle. You're forgetting whose house holds your boxes. From the parking lot, a gray sedan rolled in and parked beside the fountain. Mrs. Jensen emerged in a navy dress, carrying a folder and a small lockbox. The bridesmaids deflated. The manager waved her over like she was a medic. Brielle glared. Who invited the lawyer? I did, I said. Mrs. Jensen opened the folder. To clarify, she announced, calm as a judge, the venue contract listed Ms. Haviland as co-payer. She legally revoked authorization due to suspected fraud regarding the event's finances. The venue chose to cancel rather than absorb risk. Additionally, the Craftsman on Willow Lane is solely owned by Ms. Haviland. She has issued a notice to vacate for guests who entered without a tenant agreement. Guests? Brielle barked. We live there. You occupied with permission, Mrs. Jensen replied. Permission has been withdrawn. Ethan pressed both hands to his hair. Mom, please, don't make a scene. We can fix this. I swallowed grief the way you swallow a pill. Dry, burning, necessary. Honey, I said softly, the scene was made when Brielle told me to disappear. Brielle straightened, voice syrup thick. Fine. Take your dusty shack. We'll stay with my parents. Ethan, let's go. She tugged at his sleeve. His feet didn't move. There were other details I hadn't shared yet. The emails I found when Brielle borrowed my iPad and forgot to log out, the spreadsheet titled Projected Gifts and Loans, with a column marked Convert Mill House to Joint Title, Post-Wedding. The screenshots sat in the lockbox Mrs. Jensen now sat on a chair. Beside them lay a velvet case. Open it, Mrs. Jensen said, nodding to me. Inside sat the diamond bracelet, its clasp repaired, alongside a letter addressed to Ethan and Brielle. I had retrieved the bracelet that morning, before the rehearsal brunch, when Brielle left it on the bathroom counter like a trophy she'd already won. In the letter, I wrote exactly what I had planned for them, down to the penny, and why that plan now rested on respect rather than entitlement. Ethan's eyes flicked from the case to my face. Mom? Read it after, I said. Brielle reached for the bracelet. I closed the case. She froze. You told me to disappear, I reminded her. So I disappeared from your version of my life, but not from my son's. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the hedges, an ambulance racing for someone else's emergency. For me, the emergency had passed. The choice remained. Ethan, I said, heart hammering, if you come with me now, we'll talk. We'll read the letter. We'll figure out housing and a path that honors your future. If you go with Brielle, the lockbox goes to the court with the rest of what we found. He looked at me, then at her. The sky waited. The violinist finally set his instrument down. Mom, he whispered, what did you find? I took a breath that tasted like rain and old vows. Enough to stop a wedding, I said, and maybe to save a life. And then Ethan made his choice. Ethan's hands trembled as he reached for the letter. Brielle clutched his arm, her nails pressing crescents into his skin. Don't, she hissed. It's her manipulation. She wants to ruin us. But Ethan's eyes, wide and desperate, told me the dam had cracked. He opened the envelope with a slowness that felt like centuries unraveling. Inside were 2 sheets, my handwriting in thick blue ink, every stroke heavy with both grief and resolve. He read aloud, voice cracking, To my son and his bride. This house was meant to be a harbor, not a hostage. The funds I saved were meant to be seed for love, not fuel for greed. When I saw the spreadsheet, Brielle, with columns on converting my property and monetizing my life, I understood your words. You wanted me gone. So I have gone, from your expectations, from your control, but not from truth. If you want my blessing, earn it. If not, you will have only the emptiness of an empty house. Ethan's voice faltered on the last line. The guests, once buzzing with confusion, now stood in silent rows. Even the deputy lingered, arms folded, eyes softening with pity. A wedding had turned into a tribunal, and the bride's face, once powdered porcelain, looked like porcelain shattered. Brielle snatched the letter from his hand and tore it in half. "Lies!" she screamed. "She forged it all. She's jealous. She can't stand another woman taking her place." She spun toward me, eyes blazing. "You think you've won? Ethan loves me. He'll always choose me." Her certainty cracked when Ethan whispered, "Did you write that spreadsheet, Brielle?" The question hung in the air like a thunderhead. She faltered, lips parting, eyes darting. That pause was her verdict. Guests murmured. The bridesmaids edged back, dresses rustling like dry leaves. One groomsman, Ethan's old college roommate Marcus, muttered, "Damn, man, that's cold." Brielle spun on him, shrieking, "Shut up!" But the spell was broken. No amount of tool or vows could stitch over the truth. Ethan turned to me, his face pale but resolute. "Mom, what else is in that box?" Mrs. Jensen cleared her throat. "Evidence, Mr. Haviland. Screenshots of correspondence, financial plans that list your mother's property as collateral without her consent, and 3 emails from Brielle discussing credit applications in both your names, without your signature." Gasps rippled. Brielle's father strode forward, face red. "That's slander," he barked. "You can't—" Mrs. Jensen raised one finger, unruffled. "Sir, these will be filed in court tomorrow morning unless disputed by counsel." Her tone was ice in August. Brielle's mask shattered completely. She dropped to her knees on the damp grass, clutching Ethan's tuxedo trousers. "Baby, listen to me. I only did it because I love you. I wanted us secure. Your mom doesn't trust us. I was just planning." Her mascara bled down her cheeks, black rivers carving a desperate face. "Don't let her do this. Don't let her take everything from us." Ethan knelt too, but not in solidarity. His voice was a whisper, loud enough for all. "You already took everything, Brielle. You took my trust." The silence broke when June, my sister, whispered, "Lorraine, come on, let's go." But I stayed. I had one more move. I stepped forward, holding the velvet case. "Ethan," I said softly, "this bracelet belonged to your grandmother. It was meant to pass through hands that cherished family, not profited from it. Today, I return it to you, not to her." I pressed it into his palm. He closed his fingers around it like it burned. Brielle screamed then, a raw, guttural sound that silenced the birds in the hedges. She tore at her veil, ripped it from her head, and hurled it at my feet. "Fine!" she spat. "You want him? You want his loyalty? Keep your precious son. Keep your dusty old house. I'll find someone who actually knows how to live." She stormed off across the lawn, heels sinking in the grass, gown dragging like a fallen flag. Her bridesmaids scattered after her, whispering frantic condolences that sounded more like excuses. The guests began to drift, murmuring to each other, their sympathy cutting more toward me and Ethan than the bride who had tried to script her victory. When the last car pulled away, only Ethan, June, Mrs. Jensen, and I remained by the gazebo. The setting sun painted the sky gold, bleeding into violet. Ethan sat on the steps, head in his hands. "Mom," he said, voice breaking, "I don't even know who I am without her." I lowered myself beside him, my knees creaking but my heart steady. "You're still my son," I said, "and you're free." Freedom feels empty at first, but it's worth more than any gift. He leaned into me then, a man collapsing into boyhood just for a breath. I held him. Weeks passed. The house on Willow Lane stayed locked, its silence proof of my boundaries. Ethan moved back into the in-law apartment for a while. He took up carpentry again, the smell of pine and sawdust following him like new beginnings. He didn't talk much about Brielle, except once, when he said, "I keep waiting to be angry at you, Mom, but all I feel is relief." I nodded. Relief was enough. The lawsuit did go forward. Brielle's name now sits in public records, not on my family tree. Ethan filed for annulment. He learned the hard way that sometimes love wears a mask of entitlement. But he also learned that a mother's silence can roar louder than any outburst when backed by truth. Now, as I sit in the quiet of my porch, the summer air heavy with honeysuckle, I think about the words she said to me. The greatest gift is if you disappear. In a way, I did disappear. I disappeared from her control, her ledger, her version of what family means. What remained was me and my son, learning again to choose his life without chains. Have you ever faced betrayal? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because betrayal doesn't end in silence, it ends in revelation. And the revelation is this: never underestimate a mother who turns grief into revenge.